In Read the Bible in Lockdown, as we continue to look at Solomon's kingdom, we get glimpses of the eternal kingdom to come when Jesus returns. That happens in our passage today, so let's head back to 1 Kings.
1 Kings chapter 4, and as you can see, it begins with a list of all the chief officials of King Solomon. I could read it out, but I feel like I'd just be doing it for your entertainment purposes of seeing how I'd go at pronouncing all the names. So I'll leave you to read through all those people. As you can see, that Solomon was a worthy administrator and leader of all these officials under him for the way that he ruled. Let's keep going on to verse 20. The people of Judah and Israel were as numerous as the sand on the seashore. They ate, they drank, and they were happy. Now, I wonder if those words ring any bells for you. All the way back at the start of Genesis, God promised Abraham that he would make Abraham into a people as numerous as the sand on the seashore, all the way back in Genesis 12. And so here is a partial fulfillment of that, God's people are now so numerous. And let's keep going, verse 21. And Solomon ruled over all the kingdoms from the Euphrates River to the land of the Philistines, as far as the border of Egypt. These countries brought tribute and were Solomon's subjects all his life. So here's a map of that. We've got the Euphrates River right at the top there, on top of Hamath, all the way down to the border in Egypt. So Israel and Judah, kind of the main bit of the Israelite people, they're in the blue, but Solomon had charge of all the other nations around him as well. They all brought tribute to him. And we see this wealth in verse 22. Solomon's daily provisions were 30 cors of the finest flour and 60 cors of meal, 10 head of stall-fed cattle, 20 of pasture-fed cattle, and 100 sheep and goats, as well as deer, gazelles, roebucks, and choice fowl. For he ruled over all the kingdoms west of the Euphrates River, from Tifsah to Gaza, and had peace on all sides. During Solomon's lifetime, Judah and Israel, from Dan to Beersheba, lived in safety, everyone under their own vine and under their own fig tree. So we can see the wonderful provision that God has given Solomon, a bountiful picture of God's final banquet on the last day as well. And we can see God's people were living in safety, no threat from outside, each being able to get each provided for and not under threat. But we do have some troubling signs as well for Solomon. Verse 26, Solomon had 4,000 stalls for chariot horses and 12,000 horses. Now we're going to go back to, remember Deuteronomy 17, we've looked at that so far, God's command to the king whenever he is established. And there's a line about horses, verse 16. The king, moreover, must not acquire great numbers of horses for himself. Okay, so horses are good for an army, but not good for the Lord's army because they are from Egypt. Okay, so some worrying signs in Solomon's decision-making. I keep going, verse 27. The district governors, each in his month, supplied provision for King Solomon and all who came to the king's table. They saw to it that nothing was lacking. They also brought to the proper place their quotas of barley and straw for the chariot horses and the other horses. So, of course, the horses had to eat part of the provision too. But anyway, so we've got a picture of wonderful safety, wonderful peace, wonderful provision in Solomon's kingdom. And then, verse 29, God gave Solomon wisdom and very great insight and a breadth of understanding as measureless as the sand on the seashore. Solomon's wisdom was greater than the wisdom of all the people of the East and greater than all the wisdom of Egypt. He was wiser than anyone else, including Ethan. Didn't know that was a Bible name, but there you go. Ethan the Ezrahite, wiser than Heman, not He-Man, anyway. Calcol and Dada, the sons of Mahol. And his fame spread to all the surrounding nations. He spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs numbered 1,005. That's where we get the book of Proverbs from, by the way, probably. He spoke about plant life from the cedar of Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of walls. He also spoke about animals and birds, reptiles and fish from all the nations people came to listen to Solomon's wisdom, sent by all the kings of the world who had heard of his wisdom. So Solomon has been given so much wisdom and understanding by God. He wrote Proverbs down. He knew a lot about science and animals and things like that. And his fame was far-reaching to the nations around him. And so this gives us this picture of what Solomon has, and his kingdom gives us a picture of the greater kingdom to come and the future that we will have as part of God's people. Life may not be spectacular now, may not be plentiful now, but we can put our hope in the glorious future of a multitude of God's people who will live at peace and rest from enemies, have ample provision, and live under a wise king. And of course, God has chosen and installed that king, and his name is Jesus. So here's an earthly taste in this chapter of Solomon's rule, so that we may put our hope in the greater kingdom to come when Jesus returns.